Hello, everyone. I'm excited to see you at the Power Platform Community Conference. My name is Mike Bassani, and I'm a product leader here in our BizApps organization, specifically in Dataverse. Dataverse will be holding a bunch of sessions, everything from lifecycle management to hyperscale, and I'll be specifically leading one on how you can extend from Copilot Studio into the Microsoft Copilot. And as you head to Vegas, throw on the low-code approach. It's a great podcast to be inspired about all things Power Platform. So join that conversation as we unlock the full potential of low-code development together. Thank you, and I look forward to seeing all of you in an engaging time in Las Vegas.
Hey everybody, welcome to a new episode of the Low Code Approach. I'm Sean Feeney, a Senior Product Marketing Manager on the Power Platform team, and I'm joined by...
I'm Wendy Haddad. I'm a Senior Cloud Solution Architect, Delivery Lead, and a former Microsoft customer, and I am joined by...
Hello everyone, this is Ken, and I've got a question for you today. Does anyone remember who was the voice actor who played Shaggy on Scooby-Doo? No, I'll give you a hint. They actually have the same first name as our guest. Casey, how are you today? Please introduce yourself.
My kids love that show. Hey everyone, I'm Casey Burke. I'm a PM on the Power Apps team. I lead Application Lifecycle Management across Power Apps and the team across the broader Power Platform.
Awesome. Thanks for joining us, Casey. I feel like Ken just asked for an intro from Copilot to like, the name is Casey, give me something, and then spit it out. So thank you, Ken. Appreciate that.
I did not. It's just, I know Casey very well. I could have also said that he loves food. I know what type of drinks he prefers and other things along those lines. All right. Thanks. Over to you, Sean. Back.
Are you thinking about Scooby-Doo every time you're talking to me, Ken? I'm going to wonder that. I'm going to wonder.
People think we script these, and we're so unscripted.
Wow. Okay, let me bring this back on track. Hey, Casey, so like 9 months ago, we chatted to Kartik about ALM, Application Lifecycle Management. And 9 months ago, like Wendy says all the time, a length like that is a lifetime ago in technology. So obviously things have changed, right? But before we start going into the changes of Application Lifecycle Management and Power Platform, just could you give us a brief refresher on the concept of Application Lifecycle Management and the importance of it in the Power Platform ecosystem?
Yeah, of course. So ALM, Application Lifecycle Management, in a nutshell, it's basically the process that drives, think about efficient collaboration across the team, traceability of the changes and the different versions that each of the team members make as you're developing the application. It's the security controls around it. So who can develop what, who can deploy it where, the quality controls we put in place around testing and making sure that things are consistently delivered to the production environments. And then think about the compliance boundary around it. So admins can actually govern the process and make sure that things are done in a way that is compliant with the organizational standards. So to explain that a little bit better, we kind of break it down into phases of the ALM process. So think it is a repetitive process to get your application to production safely, and then you repeat that process as you bring in new features. So think about in the initiate phase, you want to build a plan and design the user interface and architecture of the application that you're going to go build. And then the development team starts building the application, and you might have, professional or code first developers along with citizen developers working together to build that application. Then you want to deploy it to a test environment. Run all your tests. Those might be manual tests or automated tests in that environment. Then you deploy that application when it's ready and you're happy with the quality. You deploy it to a production environment. And then you want to monitor the application in production, make sure it's healthy. And then you repeat that cycle over and over as you either fix bugs or deliver new value to your end users through new features.
Does this change the audience of who would be using the Power Platform? So I think historically, Application Lifecycle Management, or ALM, is more for the pro dev side. I know that we've had various people on who, in the executive chain who've said low code is dead, right? Ryan Cunningham. And it's not necessarily all about citizen development. It's more on, it's an application platform. It's just a development platform. So how are you seeing this evolve, the introduction of these tools maybe change the audience or change the positioning of the platform as we bring in these pro code historically type of features?
Yeah, I mean, I think there's definitely that angle there, but just as kind of a preface. So I came from Dynamics 365, which is, built on top of Power Platform. And that's really always been an enterprise grade application platform. Those projects typically did have ALM. I think when you get into Power Platform, there's definitely a huge population of citizen devs. And that's been really one of our main missions, is to democratize these best practices that you get from code first development and the value you get out of that, but democratize it for a broader audience that we have on Power Platform. So that's really been an exciting space to kind of re-envision these classic things. And if you think about, a lot of our enterprise customers nowadays, they need that compliance and that rigor around any application that really gets built on the platform. So we want to make sure that it's usable for everyone, both citizen devs and pro devs, because why not make pro devs' lives easier too, right?
Casey, I'm going to jump in real quick, because like what you and Wendy are talking about was, I think, the question that I was going to ask. What skill level is required to get started with ALM? When we think about software at times, I've heard folks say, I want this to be as easy as like a 6-year-old could use it, my grandmother, or, what have you. Can you talk to us a little bit about, the integration, and what does it look like from the consumer, the person who's coming in and wants to use ALM? What does that look like and feel like to them?
Yeah, so this has definitely evolved over time. Just I'm going to roughly quote one of our customers, Andrew Gaskins from Lumen. I think he put this out in a public post, but he was saying it used to take hours to train their citizen devs on the ALM process and how to go into Azure DevOps and request a deployment through Azure DevOps. And he said a lot of times they just still aren't getting it right. He said now they've onboarded kind of org-wide on pipelines and Power Platform, and all he has to do, he says, all right, all you have to do is go down there and you see that little rocket button, just click that right there. So really it's not a high bar to get started and be successful in ALM. And obviously, we still have a ways to go, and kind of higher ambitions and different things we want to do, and expose it to more audiences.
Hey, Casey, so thank you for the Lumen example, and shout out to Andrew. We huge person in the show. Yeah, for real, seriously. So how has Power Platform pipelines, ALM, automated ALM and Power Platform, how has that evolved in the last year? And so with that, do you see more customers adopting this strategy as it's evolved through its announcement? Or do you still see customers utilizing GitHub pipelines or Azure DevOps, and they're slowly making that transition? What have you seen out in the field?
Yeah, so I mean, first, it's been an incredible year for ALM. We've delivered a lot of value, and it's not just across pipelines. Pipelines is one facet of ALM, but there's a lot more going on. And so I think we put out 15 blog posts or something, and we're still going on a lot of improvements in this area. So some of the more exciting things, I guess, that we've delivered this year, something near and dear to Ken very much, would be in environment groups. And that kind of gets the whole process started, right? Where through environment routing, devs can just automatically get their own development environment, and they're already set up. And then they can use preferred solutions to make sure that their work is all organized in the right place, which really helps them out as they go deploy their application later. And then we have sharing limits now that kind of prevents them from using those personal dev environments as like a pseudo prod. So you can say, you know what, we're not going to share this app with maybe more than 5 users. We want you to actually deploy that to production. And then when they get blocked from sharing, we guide them to pipelines and say, your admin wanted you to put that app here. We want to make sure that it can get to production securely, right? So we have a delegated deployments and pipelines, which allows you to set up a service principal to do the deployment instead of the user. So that means that the developers can either be an end user in prod, or maybe we don't want them to have access at all. After that, we introduce the ability to share during deployment so that it's really just kind of touch free for the admins. They request who should have access in the production environment. And then we introduce rollback. So, things do happen, unfortunately, and we want to make sure that safety switch is there. So you can redeploy the older version if anything did go haywire, if you will. Next thing that we just announced at Build that I'm super excited about is native source code integration. So this is really going to bring it all together, especially for the pro dev community. I think you asked about, kind of adoption to, where we see in as far as customers using our native capabilities versus other tools. Well, I'll just say that growth has been very strong. I think it's been about 600% just over the last year. So we have about 13,000 active customers every month using pipelines, and hoping to grow that even more as we go forward here.
I'm not going to lie. This has been a year, not just for AI, but like just for our investment in governance. And we've moved a lot of cheese. I'm looking at you, Ken, for all the disruption your team is doing and advancements there. But for the early adopters of application lifecycle management in the Power Platform, we've launched pipelines, we've evolved pipelines, and now we've published new recommendations on environment strategies. How is this changing their approach to governance, or what things do the early adopters need to consider when it comes to application lifecycle management and some of our new governance advancements and recommendations?
Yeah, so I would say anyone just getting started in their journey right now, I would start with the native capabilities. And like I said, that's not just pipelines. There's source code integration that's coming out. We have version control now in Power Automate. And there's going to be a lot more coming on this front with source code integration, other things that it's probably a little too early to talk about just yet. But so what you can do, and I like to use a strategy that this is when you want to set up an ALM process across your entire organization. You have one tool to manage, and admins have full visibility, full control over the process. They can set it up once and then not have to worry about it going forward. So definitely start on the native capabilities. And from there, you can use the extension points to integrate your custom processes if you need to, right? And we have a lot of customers doing that already. And the reason for that is you can still use pipelines and Power Platform, for example, and hook in a lot of Azure DevOps tests. You can hook in GitHub. You can run integrations with, customers are using tools like ServiceNow and Jenkins and GitLabs and anything else you can imagine, right? So really the possibilities are pretty flexible here. And then what that means is that even if you have some of these custom extensions set up today, as we build more and more into the product, all you have to do is disable those and you can adopt the native capabilities. So there's no retooling involved, right? So that's, I don't want to put customers on a path where it's like, use this today and then you got to go migrate everything over and retrain people. It's just a lot of work, right? So this is really kind of the best long-term approach that I would recommend for new customers.
So Casey, I'm going to be a little curious here for our customers.
I thought you were going to say dramatic, Ken, but go ahead.
It's not Ken, no.
That's why I inserted the dramatic pause here, right? Along with my Easter egg when I introduced Casey. So have folks figured that out yet? Anyway, by the way, Casey, so how, with all of this innovation that you and the team are pumping into the ALM space, how do they keep track of all of this? Does this become just now an overwhelming matrix, if you will, of code just going out everywhere to all these different environments? Can you tell us, maybe give us some customer examples of how folks are using this and how they're organizing their ALM strategies?
Yeah, it's kind of funny because, I've worked with Power Platform. We used to call it Dynamic CRM back then. And, felt like I was kind of staying on top of all the different updates that were coming out. Today, there is so much going on around Power Platform and in the dynamic space. I think it's impossible for anyone to totally keep up on all the improvements, but that's okay, right? And in the ALM space, just to kind of use a customer example, I won't name names, but I think they're going to come down with us to the Power Platform conference and we'll tell this story down there a little bit. So I'll just kind of speak generically about it for now, but we have a customer in the energy industry and they had an ALM process that really rivaled our own internally at Microsoft. It is incredibly sophisticated. They have a lot of compliance and constraints they needed to build in, custom systems they needed to integrate with. And so they have gone through now 3 versions of their ALM pipeline, and it uses that strategy that I was talking about, whether it's citizen-led projects or professional developed applications, they're all using the same pipeline for ALM. So they've gone through 3 versions of this, and kind of the last version they call V2 was a combination of the ALM accelerator and then the customer's custom extensions. That gave them a huge boost in reliability over their V1 pipeline that was actually struggling quite a bit with deployment success rates and so forth. But really, it's still a lot of overhead for them to manage. It didn't provide, the optimal user experience. They've since adopted pipelines in Power Platform, and they've been able to deprecate a good probably 50% plus of their custom code that they were running in the prior versions. And they've seen reliability go way up. It's a more intuitive experience for their makers, so it's getting good adoption. And so that kind of, gave us really good confidence as we worked through them to kind of put this model out for other customers. If we can make them successful, I'm pretty confident that we can onboard anyone, and even some pretty sophisticated processes. And really, that's my goal at the end of the day. Whichever tool you want to use, that is completely okay. I just want you to be successful in ALM.
So, Casey, Wendy mentioned moving folks' cheese, if you will. And at the speed that we're going, it sounds like the customers need to consistently evaluate their processes to stay in line with what we're releasing. But I'm a little curious. Does a customer have to stick to out of the box, say, deployment pipelines that we offer them, or can they customize them? Can they sort of branch off and really tailor them to their own organization?
Yeah, exactly. And then that's kind of what I was getting at in the last comment. So you can start with the baseline capabilities that we provide out of the box, and we're shipping updates all the time, right? But it's not a forced update that you have to start taking advantage of day one. You can adopt at your own time. Everything we do is backward compatible, right? So if you see a new capability come out, you can start using it or not. So the custom extensions that we have built into the system, there's 3 different very deliberate extension points, and that provides kind of full flexibility and control over the different stages of execution of a pipeline. That's where you can use those hooks to integrate with your own systems. You can run custom validations and really anything else that you want to do. And so this customer that I was speaking of earlier, they use all 3 of those extensions actually, and they do some stuff before the solution gets exported from the dev environment. They run some sanity checks on it. They run some compliance and security checks on it. And then in the other extensions, they're running basically like what we call pull requests in Azure DevOps, because they want to put everything in source control. And so it's really pretty cool to see it. I won't give away too much because we are going to talk about it at the conference here pretty soon.
Awesome. Hey, Casey, so you mentioned tools, and you mentioned, there's options for, organizations when implementing ALM. And I was wondering, speaking of tools, can you talk a little bit about how the ALM accelerator fits into this and how customers can utilize that to maybe determine best tools, or like, who is that made for? How does that work within Power Platform?
Yeah, for sure. And so, like Mark Schweigert is a good friend of mine. He was driving the ALM accelerator for a long time. It's on a different team now, but really we worked very closely in partnership to drive not only the capabilities that were needed in the ALM accelerator, but also take the learnings we got out of that really drove into our in-product investments. And so that was a tool that is very much an accelerator, right? It was never meant to be a long-term solution for everyone to use for ALM forever, right? We had some certain product gaps at the time. I think the main, kind of gap that you'll see today is it's better suited for code first development than what we have natively. And I really think native source code integration is going to be the game changer for that. So really what the strategy is just, we put that out, wanting to make sure that the customers were unblocked, but also use it as a teaching tool to understand all the complexities that go on in ALM. So that is still very much alive and well today, but in the very near future, I think I should just say that we've already had a lot of customers transitioning off of that into native capabilities. I think that with source code integration, it's going to close a lot of those gaps, and so won't really be needed too much in the future. And that's really the hope, right? Not just for us, but also the team that manages the ALM accelerator. So we want to make sure that the customers have the capabilities just right out of the box, and they don't have to go through all the setup or maintain any of the code that comes with it.
So Casey, we've been talking about this, and I think, I had a customer reach out and ask me about the limitations around pipelines. So can you talk to us a little bit about the support that we have for the way that, the platform is evolving with, you mentioned groups, so I'm just going to dive into that, right? It sounds like ALM is becoming very closely tied to the environment strategy in the way that we are moving forward. So maybe a question is, how does pipelines support multi-environment deployment strategies? Is it scalable? Our own internal tenant has over 20,000 environments. Could pipelines scale out to something like that?
Yeah. So, and I've definitely seen a lot of this feedback as well. And, first, we're shipping improvements with every release, and it's been pretty exciting just to see the progress in the last year, right? And we still have ways to go, obviously. So as you talk about the scale factor, I think within Microsoft, there are quite a few pipelines, but as you think about, like, if there were one team that had to manage that, right, it is a little bit manual today. You were mentioning the environment strategy, Ken. And so with things like environment routing and environment groups, really, we want that to be more of a set it and forget it for the admin. They shouldn't have to go in and manually create pipelines for all these new environments that devs got routed to in those groups. And so that's really kind of the next phase for us. You'll see some announcements coming out here in a little bit, but think about just full automation for the setup process, making sure that folks have access to pipelines. And it's really just set up and ready to go. And the admin doesn't have to get involved really at any point in the process. They just delegate the approver team, and they're going to be responsible for the quality and ensuring that things get approved in the right ways as they come into production environments.
I was just going to ask, about a little bit about delegation. Like, how might a customer sort of think about structuring their ALM? Is it, I'm going to delegate this to my pro devs or my citizen devs? Or is it that, I'm looking at a specific dev team? I know there's, tons of different ways they could do this. I'm also curious from an admin perspective, how do they keep track of this? Is there any visibility for this? Or do we have reporting that says, oh, hey, here's how many pipelines we have?
Yeah, and I mean, that was one of the core goals as we started developing this. So as you think about something that we call the pipelines host, it's kind of the brain for the whole system. And so you can set up one host and run that across your entire organization, all the environments. You can have thousands of environments to it, thousands or millions of pipelines if you wanted, right? Everything's going to be centrally controlled. You have full visibility over the out-of-the-box reports that are built into that application. You can build custom reports off of it, and you know exactly who deployed what solution, which environment it came from, which environment it went to, and then you have full traceability of all the other things that go along with it and the different versions that got deployed. And we even keep backups of all the artifacts, so all the different solutions. So in case, hey, Ken, did you accidentally delete your development environment? I'm sure you might have done that once or twice, right? Well, you don't have to worry about losing all your customizations of the things that you've built in that environment, because we automatically have a backup for you now. And very soon, you'll actually be able to access that as Ken from within any other development environment you have access to. Just go to solution import and you see all the backups of all your solutions that you've ever built. So that part's pretty cool. And we're going to use that framework as we build out the new capabilities and maintain that central control plane. And so it's, just lightning easy for admins to set up and have visibility over all the operations going on in the entire organization.
What's the vision here? Because I don't think we're doubting the value of ALM. There's kind of two value propositions. There's more than that, I'm sure. Sean will be missing, but with the Power Platform, right? We talk a lot about bringing shadow IT into the light, being able to lower the bar of entry to good governance and good processes. But on the business side, I think some of the value proposition is the ability to move quickly and solve business problems faster. And so are we trying to push everything through ALM? How do these personal development environments fit in if we're kind of going that direction with our environment strategy? Can you talk a little bit about the vision here?
Yeah, it's a great question. And I mean, even though I drive ALM, I'm not going to be the person that tells you that everything everyone does needs to follow an ALM process. I'll give a specific example. So the team that Ken and I are on. I manage one of the work streams that, we kind of report out on our execution to management and things like that. So I have to send all these reminders to people that, hey, it's your turn to present this week. And, things like that. I have to send them a template for the documents that they need to write. And so I wanted to automate all that process, right? I did that in a single environment using Cloud Flows and some other components in the platform. I do not use ALM for that, because if one of these flows breaks and goes down, it's not the end of the world. I think there's like 2 notifications that go out a week. I can fix it in that environment and just tell folks, hey, there's a screw up on the automation, not a big deal, right? So really, there is a bar for when something becomes kind of more personal productivity. You just wanted to automate some processes versus this is an application that is critical to the business. If something happens to this application, then we're actually going to, potentially lose revenue if something goes down, or there's going to be other, business impact to it, right? So that's when you start thinking about putting some rigor around the process. Like, hey, maybe we shouldn't develop in the same place where production users are using it. If you introduce a bug, you immediately impact all the users of your system. Maybe we should actually put some testing and quality controls around this and use different environments to progress it through that life cycle. So really that's where ALM fits. There's personal productivity that should stay personal productivity. ALM is when you want to start scaling it up. As far as the vision goes, as I kind of painted out at the beginning, the native capabilities that we have today, which is just pipelines, is one small facet of a much bigger process that is ALM. So if you look at the stuff that Ken's driving around environment routing, the broader team around environment groups, that all fits into this picture. As we go forward, we need to start thinking about how do we start making testing easier and have it integrated into the same process? And also, how do we think about monitoring these applications in the production environment and being very proactive about detecting anomalies or potential issues, making sure we have the right feedback loops in place for the end users to say, hey, Ken, something isn't right with this app that you built. You want to fix this, or hey, Ken, I have a feature request, would love for the app to do this. And then he has that visibility and can make his app a lot better, a lot healthier, right?
Well, and then I guess as part 2 to that question about vision, we have, GitHub and pipelines and Azure DevOps and pipelines in the Power Platform. Is the long-term goal to standardize on one ALM solution, or is the goal to provide a lot of different options for companies and developers to pick which tool when works best for them?
Yeah, so the goal is to have most of the capabilities that most customers want to do available out of the box. There's always going to be a place for tools like Azure DevOps. In fact, we're actually using Azure DevOps for native source code integration for the source code repository. We're not going to build, version control into the system or anything. And then there's more advanced scenarios. So I'll use an example of one of our customers in manufacturing, and they make a lot of heavy equipment and they have dealerships all around the world. And they need to be able to release a single application to like 50 different tenants at different dealerships across the world. That's not a use case for pipelines and Power Platform. That's a pretty advanced thing that not a lot of customers do, right? So I would say always use Azure DevOps for that use case. We obviously so Azure DevOps and GitHub are the 2 Microsoft stacks. So everything we do is going to have integration with both of those. We're starting with source code integration with Azure DevOps, then we'll do GitHub next. The other thing is, so ALM it's typically not going to be the same across all customers, right? We have customers that use GitLabs, Bitbucket, you name it, Jenkins. So we've made sure that flexibility is going to remain in the system, and that it's pretty natural and easy to integrate with those other systems of record. Because no customer wants to come in and say, you know what, we were set up on Bitbucket, right? And this is used across the entire organization. They're probably not going to want to retool and go to something else just for Power Platform. And so really that's the goal, is to maintain that flexibility. And I wish it were more of a straightforward answer to say, like, here's how everyone's going to do it day one. But I would say, here's how most customers are going to do it. For the customers that have very customized processes and things set up organization-wide that they really can't change in the Power Platform, we have that flexibility to make sure that you're still going to be successful.
Casey, great answers, like phenomenal answers, as always. But let me just drop the large piece of potassium in the water here. What do I need to run it? What license?
Yeah, so it is a feature of managed environments, right? So as we know, managed environments is premium governance capability set, and you get ALM along with that. So absolutely, it's going to require premium licenses. With pipelines specifically, there were some exceptions built in. Really, the model we wanted to project is that, it's not a premium development capability, it's a premium governance capability. So what that means is that in your development environments where the team is working on the application, you do not need managed environments there. It's really just about the target environment. So think about like your production environment that needs to be set up as managed environment.
I was just going to ask that question, Casey. Like, that's a very common question from our customers is, so what exactly do I need to license? Do I need to license the dev environment? Do I need to license the dev type environment?
I don't answer licensing questions. I'm kidding. Normally, I defer those to you.
Yes, I know you do, but I'm putting you on the spot this time. Right?
I'm definitely not a licensing expert. On our end, it's basically part of managed environments. I believe that requires either.
Well, let me put it another way, Casey. Let me rephrase it and put it another way. So if I have an environment that is managed, can I move my solution from a managed environment into an unmanaged environment?
No, you cannot.
Or can I have it standard environment and then move it from a managed environment? Sounds like the answer is no.
The answer is yes on that one. Yeah.
Oh, okay.
So standard to managed environment, yes.
Okay, got it. So there's some subtle nuances in how the deployment chain actually happens and so on. I think that's what I've heard from customers is like they like clarity.
Yeah. The easiest way to think about it is your target environments that you're deploying to need to be managed environments.
Perfect. Absolutely perfect.
Hey, Casey. So earlier you referenced this example, like ALM can move across the entire tenant, right? So all the environments in the tenant. What about multi-tenant? Is that possible? How do we do that?
No, it is not possible. It's a use case that comes up, I would say a decent amount, right? I can't say for sure whether or not we're going to support that at this moment in time. There's a lot of sophistication around supporting something like that.
It's a large outlier too, right, Casey? I mean, it's just one of those really...
A little bit, yeah. I would say if you have those use cases, you should use Azure DevOps or GitHub.
Awesome. I appreciate that. Thank you. So I think we're coming to the end of this episode, but we're always going to have more to talk about with application lifecycle management. It's a topic that comes up all the time. We have a AKA link that you probably heard us advertise at the earlier portion of this episode where we want you to put in topic requests for us, and ALM frequently comes up. So Casey, I'm sure we're going to get more. We're going to have you come on and talk, hopefully maybe some Copilot stuff later on. Who knows? I don't know. It's a magic word. By contract, I have to mention it once every episode. But listen.
One quick thing. One quick thing. Casey will be at the Power Platform Community Conference. So I encourage customers to find him at the booth and grill him on questions.
Absolutely. Right? Looking forward to meeting some new folks.
Yeah. Think of those questions now. Yeah, bring them over and definitely chat with Casey. Casey rocks, so it will be a great time. And definitely register for the Power Platform Community Conference if you have not yet. There's some awesome workshops. I think Ken knows about those things, and he'd be more than happy to talk to you about it. Hit him up on LinkedIn. Same thing with Casey. And
thanks, Sean. Really appreciate that. Yes.
Anytime. Anyway.
And Sean's cell phone number and personal
Hey now. Wow. Producer, edit, please. Thank you, V. Hey, anyway, thank you so much, Casey. We really appreciate having you on the show and can't wait to chat to you again.
Thank you all very much. It's been fun.